Hi, I'm Alex from Sunrise Stained Glass. This is video 2 in which I'll be showing you how to cut glass, the techniques we use. Video 1 concerned pattern making. So our patterns are made and today we'll be using these to cut out our glass shapes. To demonstrate all the techniques in stained glass, I'm making this small panel, the design of which you can download yourself and print out. If you visit www.sunriseglass.co.uk, you'll find the image there. It's A4 size, so you can just print it out on your printer at home. In the end, it will look something like this panel behind me. Now, a few notes on selecting your colours when you come to make a window. You want to start with your most dominant colour and then work out from there. Choose colours which work well together and try not to go too crazy with your colour selection. Keep it to a nice limited palette, always works better. So our most dominant colour is the sun, that's the focal point. So I've started by picking a nice amber. So I've selected a nice light amber here, and then from there selected some greens to go on the hills in the foreground. I've got a textured clear for the kind of sun ray area, and I've picked a nice purple for those two corner sections you'll see, because it goes nicely. I think it will add a bit of interest to the window. So our next stage is cutting. Now to cut glass we need a glass cutter. Here's mine, it looks like this. This is a carbide wheel oil fed glass cutter. I very much recommend you investing in one of these. They're a little bit more expensive, there are cheaper glass cutters available, but an oil fed carbide wheel is the best. It will save you money in the long run by less wasted glass when you're cutting. Now, how is glass cut? The small wheel on the end of this glass cutter rolls along the surface of the glass and makes a score line across it. It doesn't look like much to the eye, but then when you apply pressure to the glass, it just snaps apart. The reason for this is, directly underneath the wheel, a tiny crack is too small to see, it's really minute, too small to see with the naked eye, but a tiny crack just goes along the surface of the glass, directly underneath your cutting wheel. When you apply pressure, that crack goes straight through the thickness of the glass and the glass breaks apart. The problem is if you put too much pressure on the wheel, instead of that crack just being a nice clean crack that goes directly down, it will split off in different ways. You'll get lots of fractures along that line. Then when you come to break, the break will run across one of those fractures and break across your piece, break across the sheet of glass that you're trying to cut. Your shape won't come out properly, you'll have all kinds of problems. So learning the right amount of pressure to put down is key in glass cutting. Conversely, too little pressure will also cause you problems because that crack may not be deep enough and you'll have real trouble breaking the glass. So the right amount of pressure, again, that is key. It's worth getting some cheap like horticultural glass and just practice cutting until you find the perfect pressure where the glass breaks consistently and evenly and correctly. Let's cut some glass. We're going to cut our clear glass first. Mix up the sky in our little picture over there. Always make sure you cut on the smooth, shiny side of the glass. That will be the outside of your window, the back of your panel when it's finished. You should also watch out that you make sure all your glass, especially textured glass, is facing the correct way. So the textured side is the inside, smooth, shiny side is the back. So we're going to take one of our panel pieces, our stencils that we've made, and place it on the glass in the most space efficient way as we can to conserve as much glass as we can. Find the best place for it. I've got a straight edge on my piece here and a straight edge here in the glass, so I can line them up, and that looks like the most efficient way to place this. Once you've decided where to put your stencil, you need to draw around it with a pen. Sharpie is usually best, or something equivalent. If you're cutting a very dark glass, you can get a white pen which you can more easily see. So make sure this is lined up, hold it in place tightly so it can't move. Very important that it doesn't move when you're drawing around it. I'm going to put this piece in a pile over here, so I know that that one's done. So now we have that shape drawn out, ready to cut. It's very important that you cut the line away. The line is on the waste side of the glass. So we're going to place our glass cutter wheel, the centre of this wheel, on the inside of that line when we cut. Now, to cut a straight line, you should always use a straight edge. I'm using the straight edge on my L square. This is also used to cut right angles. It has a little ledge here, which you can line up with the edge of a piece of glass. So you can line it up like that and then cut at right angles. We're just going to use the straight edge as a ruler here. So, I have to line this up with our line. Line the centre of the wheel of our cutter with the inside of this line. There. Check it's straight. That looks straight. Hold this steady. Start at one edge. Always go from one edge of the glass to the other. And apply the right amount of pressure, not too hard, and just bring the cutter straight back smoothly. Now that has scored the glass just on the inside of the line. Now I'm going to hold the glass like this, my thumbs on top, my fingers underneath, and a quick snapping pressure will break the glass apart. There we go. Now you might be able to just see the pen line is still left on this. This is our waste side of the glass, so we've got rid of that line. And we're left with a nice straight cut along this piece. Now, when you're cutting glass, it is possible for small fragments of glass to break off, especially when you're snapping it. So it is a good idea to always wear safety glasses, which I will do from now on. There we go. Now, the same again here. We're cutting another straight line. So line the cutter up with your line. Get the wheel on the inside of the line that you've drawn. Check that it's straight. Apply the right amount of pressure. Bring it straight back. Ease up the pressure a little bit at the end, just to avoid chipping the edge. Then hold your glass, quick sharp pressure. The line's cut. Then hold the glass like this and break apart. If when you score the glass, you notice a kind of dust around the score line or little bits chipping out, that means you're using too much pressure. You might recognise the sound of that score there. That can be a kind of guide that you're using the right amount of pressure, but it's not a golden rule because different glasses make different sounds and it's not a consistent thing that you can go on. So the best way to find the right amount of pressure to use is just to experiment. Now there are a number of ways of holding a glass cutter. You might have noticed I was holding it almost like a pencil, but with one finger on this edge when cutting down a straight edge like this, just to keep it smooth. You can hold it just kind of like a pencil and cut like this if you're cutting a shape. You can also hold it in one hand like this with your thumb on the top, put it on the glass, push down and then guide it with your thumb like this as you cut. I'll show you that technique as we're just going to cut this curve here. Now again, cut away the line. So I'm going to hold the piece of glass like this, keep the glass steady with this hand whilst guiding the cutter with my thumb. So I'll just place that there. Whoops, we've scored the line. A little bit of pressure. Now we've got a slight curve on the next cut, so again I should cut that, but with a different technique here, so you can see how I'm doing it. I'm going to hold it with this hand, again guide it with my thumb, but hold the cutter in a different way. Now this is quite a small piece. I could probably just about break it off with my fingers, but I'm going to show you how to break it off with pliers. Breaking out with pliers is especially useful when you're trying to remove quite a small piece of glass which you can't get your fingers around and it's too small. So you want to get the flat side of your breaker Grozer pliers on the top. Get it right up to the line, and just as you would do with your hands, a quick sharp pressure and the piece breaks apart. Our first piece is now completely cut out, so we need to compare every piece to our stencils. We need to match these up and make sure that our piece of glass is exactly the same size as our stencil, as this one is. So this piece of glass can be used. If your glass comes out slightly too big, you can Groze, or even better grind it down until it exactly matches your stencil piece. If your piece of glass is too small, you may have to recut. Try and adjust your cutting to be more accurate in future. Now I'd just like to demonstrate quickly what I mean by grozing. You can hold the pliers with the curved jaw down, pivot the pliers here, and just drag that jaw across the glass like that, and it will just, these jaws are serrated, and that serration will just chip away in a controlled manner the glass. So if you had a little, sometimes you can break glass and there's a very sharp little shard of an edge sticking out there, which is very easy to cut your fingers on. You can just take that off just by grozing like so. Also you can take corners off just like that. You can also use the flat side to kind of nibble the glass like so, and just eat away at it to alter your shape. Now a better way of taking off sharp edges and corners is using a grinder. But if you don't have a grinder, you can do it with grazing pliers. A lot of chips break off when you're grazing, so always wear safety glasses. To break out difficult shapes, we can use these. These are called cut runners. They're pliers with a line on the top of one side, which you can line up with your score line, and it applies just the right amount of pressure to make a crack run across your score. Now I'll just demonstrate how they're used. I use them for cutting this shape for the sun, difficult shapes like this. It wouldn't really work to just snap that out because of the circular shape of it. So I use the cut runners on each end, and I can tease that free. Now, to demonstrate how they work, I'll cut a delicate piece here. So I've just scored a curve across this piece of glass here. So I'm going to line up the guideline on the top of the cut runners with the top of that score and just squeeze. You might have had that little chip. Now I can see the crack has run about halfway along that curve. So I'm going to do the same from the other side. Now that fracture has run all the way along, so I just need to give it a little bit of persuasion, and that will break completely free. A little bit more pressure on this side. There we go. So that's how you use cut runners. They can also be used for cutting long straight lines, sometimes quite useful. Just use them on each end if you need to. Very useful tool. Another useful technique for breaking glass along straight lines is to use the ball end of your cutter as a fulcrum. You place it underneath the score line, directly underneath, and then push down on the glass either side, and the piece you want will just break off like that. When you're cutting glass, you should never score over the same line twice. But a little tip, if it does go wrong and you want to do it again, you can turn the glass over, score over your line from the other side, and then break it this way. When you break glass apart, you should always have the score line on top. Now that's all of the glass for our window cut. Fairly easy shapes there. It will take a bit of practice to get the knack of glass cutting, but nothing too challenging. I'm going to show you now how to cut a more challenging shape, an inside curve. It's the most difficult shape generally you'll come across in glass cutting. So I'll just cut a bit of this glass off. Let's take this bit off here. We'll try and cut out a small inside curve in here like this. So we're going to want to remove this area, keep this piece. So firstly, we're going to score around that on the outside of the line as ever, keeping a nice smooth consistent pressure. It's very crucial, especially when cutting curves, to be as smooth as possible. So to do that, I'm going to line this up so I can get a smooth run at it like this, and I'm going to turn my body as I cut. Okay. Now, to break this out, we're actually going to do it in stages. So inside on that waste piece of glass, I'm going to cut a few more radiused lines going out to the edge, getting less severe as they approach the edge, but being very careful not to cross our original score line. Now we can put a few lines across this, being very careful not to cross our original score line, and almost like a spider's web. And then when we break it out, they will help us break the inside glass, which we're trying to remove, into small pieces which can fall out of the glass. Okay. So I've got a semicircle with some radius lines coming down like that. Quite similar to our logo here, in fact, but our actual score line will be up there with none of these lines crossing our actual score line that we were trying to work to. So now we need our grazing pliers. A lot of glass will chip off here, so do it over a bucket, or I'm using a dustpan. I'm going to start at the edge and start chipping away. Now I've come about half the way up into the curve. By removing this glass gradually, we're releasing the stress in there, making it easier for the glass to break out without running across the piece we're trying to keep. Now I've applied some pressure to the edge where my score line starts, and I can see that break has just gone through the glass and it gets about halfway round, so I'm just going to work it round, applying just enough pressure to spread that all the way around. Now that should be ready to break out. And there we go, our inside curve removed. Now there is another technique that can be handy to use when cutting inside curves. Just cut another piece here. Now, by tapping the back of the glass with the ball end of your glass cutter, you can actually cause that small fracture to run through, and just by tapping that, I see that crack has spread through, and I can encourage that to follow along the score line, just tapping it lightly on the back. You can hear in the tone, and there we go, inside curve cut. So that concludes our second video on glass cutting. I hope you've learned some valuable techniques. All our glass is cut on our panel, and it's ready for video 3, in which we'll be leading up our window. For an extensive range of glass tools and glass products, please visit our shop, www.sunriseglass.co.uk. To find out more about what we do here in the studio and view some of the windows that we make, you can visit our studio website, www.stained-windows.co.uk, or alternatively you can just Google Sunrise Stained Glass. You can find both sites that way. Thanks for watching.